We're quickly going to go through the principles of the Constitution. The principles, or principles in general, are kind of a foundation that different things have, kind of themes that we see throughout the Constitution. So the first one is popular sovereignty. You might remember this term from last year, but what popular sovereignty means is people are the source of the power. So we all realize the government's a very powerful thing. What this is suggesting is that people give the government its power. And you might be sitting there thinking, well, I'm not all that powerful, especially when I compare myself to like a senator or the president. They're way more powerful than we are. So how are we the source of this power? And it is through voting. So think of Joe Biden. You could argue Biden is the most powerful person in the United States. He got that power because we, the people, which we see in the first three words of the Constitution, elected him president. If we're unhappy with him in 2024, we can remove him if he runs for reelection. We could remove him by not voting for him, by voting for his opponent. So that's the idea of popular sovereignty. The next one is limited government. Limited government is the idea that government only has the powers the Constitution gives it. So, in other words, the government cannot do anything at once. I was asking the class about this. Someone said, well, the government can't come in and just take your house away from you without any good reason. And that's absolutely correct. The government cannot do that because the Constitution doesn't allow that to happen. So, yes, the government's powerful, but it can't do anything that it wants to do. The third principle you're already familiar with, we talked about it in the last unit, is separation of powers. Power is divided into three different branches. I want you to get these down, even though you might think you know them, because we're going to talk about them all year. The three branches of government are the legislative branch, which is Congress, the executive branch, which is the president, and the judicial branch, which is the courts. They set this up because you have to remember, it's 1787, they were still worried about the king and how much power the king had. So they say we're going to have three different branches, and all three branches are going to be somewhat equal in power so they don't get out of control. Kind of leading into the next one, which has to do with the branches, they set up something called checks and balances. Checks and balances is each branch has the power to watch or limit the action of others. I'll give you a couple examples on this one. The balancing out part. If a new law is passed, it starts, and we'll learn this, it starts in Congress, and they have to approve it, but it doesn't become law. Then it goes to the president, and the president has to either agree or disagree to it. So in that case, there are two different branches dealing with lawmaking. Another example, let's say the president does something that's illegal. Congress has the power to jump in and attempt to impeach and ultimately remove the president. So they kind of think of it as they watch over one another. And for big things, it may take more than one branch to get it accomplished. The fifth principle is something called federalism. This is probably new. Federalism is the idea that, yes, we have a strong national government, but we also have strong state governments, and that power is divided or split. We'll talk more about this later, but there are certain things the national government cannot do, and the same for states. For instance, I'll give you an example. Only the national government can declare war. States don't have the power to do that. But only the states have the power to make laws about marriages. That's something that the national government cannot jump in and do. So there's this division of power. Number 6 is something called republicanism. Don't get too confused on this. This has nothing to do with the Republican Party. It's based on the fact that the United States is a republic. But republicanism is citizens elect representatives to carry out their wishes. So when we go to vote in November, I choose candidates that I think will represent me and what I believe in and carry out what I think should be done. That's the whole point of republicanism. Our last one is individual rights. We all have individual rights, and the Constitution protects those individual rights. Examples include the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. The Second Amendment talks about we have the right to bear arms, we have the right to own weapons, and the Constitution protects those rights. And I put up here many of those are found in the Bill of Rights, which we'll talk about in the second part of this unit.